As of right now, the Utah Jazz have the second best record in the NBA, which 20 games into the season I did not expect to be saying. And it's not like the Utah Jazz have an incredible roster either, with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert being their two best players. But as a team, they are playing exceptionally well and shooting 42.5 threes a game at an efficiency of 40%. Their effective field goal percentage is also one of the highest in the NBA at 55.7%, but it's not just the offensive end they're dominating. They're also one of the best defensive teams and one of the best rebounding teams, and that really just goes down to Rudy Gobert. And yeah, with Rudy Gobert they average the most offensive and defensive rebounds in the league. But as I always do, let's just take a look at the players individually and then review my predictions for the season. And since I just mentioned Rudy Gobert, I think that's a great place to start. So right now, I think a lot of people have some different thoughts about Rudy Gobert. We all know that Shaq isn't a fan of Rudy and openly criticises him a lot. But then again, Shaq seems to criticise almost every NBA player. Rudy did also just sign a 5-year, $205 million extension with the Utah Jazz, making him the most expensive centre ever. And this triggered a lot of fans, and I can understand why, as Gobert isn't even close to being one of the best NBA players right now, and I would say that at max, he's the third best centre in the league, obviously being behind Jokic and Embiid. But for this Utah Jazz team, Gobert is incredibly valuable, and if you take him off this team, they get far, far worse. As I previously mentioned, the Jazz are the best rebounding team right now and one of the best defensive teams, which Gobert plays a huge part in. So although he's costing the Utah Jazz a lot, I don't think the extension was a bad idea. And I've also heard a lot of fans saying that Gobert is no longer one of the best defensive players in the NBA, which I strongly disagree with. He currently has the second most blocks in the NBA, third most defensive win shares, and third best defensive rating in the entire league. So if anyone tries to tell you that Rudy Gobert isn't one of the best defensive players in the NBA right now, they don't know what they're talking about. But now let's talk about Donovan Mitchell, who is one of the most elite young players in the NBA right now. Even in his rookie season, he averaged 20 points a game and was deservedly an All-Star last season for the first time in his career. His stats so far for this season are very similar to last season, and I mean very, very similar. But I do feel like he's developing into more of a leader now. He may just be 24, but he is the present and the future of the Utah Jazz if he does stay there. The only weakness that I think you can really apply to Mitchell is that he's an average defender, he's not the most efficient, and he's relatively short at 6 feet tall. But his height he obviously can't control, and there's only so much impact he can have on the defensive end without exhausting himself for the offense. So I don't see this as much of an issue. But for his efficiency, I think that Mitchell does take a few too many contested layups, and his game would benefit from him either passing the ball out in these situations or pump faking more often. But a lot of Mitchell's game is based around his explosiveness, and seeing him go for crazy layups is really fun to watch. And now I'm going to talk about Mike Conley, who I think as a whole is a really underrated player. Even though the Jazz have had a great start to the season, you won't hear much about him even though he's averaging 17 points, 6 assists and over 40% from free. He's shooting the most threes of his career at 7 a game, and his effective field goal percentage is at a career high. Even though he's getting on now at 33, he will be very valuable in the playoffs, and I think he has the potential to have a few high scoring games when Mitchell has an off night. So don't be surprised if you see Conley drop 30 points in the playoffs. And now let's talk about Jordan Clarkson, who's also having a great year and in fact his best year to date. Almost 18 points a game, and he's only playing 25 minutes per game. Not to mention how he's shooting 8 threes a game at 38%, and his free throw percentage is actually the highest in the league right now, with him going 35 for 36. Just like Mike Conley, he's having the most efficient year of his career with an effective field goal percentage of 57%. Whether he'll keep up this great scoring is another question, but either way he'll still be a great player for the Utah Jazz and can also be one of their biggest scorers. And finally, I'll just briefly mention Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic and Joe Ingles, as they're all great 3-point shooters and have key roles in this team too. Now in terms of the Utah Jazz team, they're definitely overachieving at the moment, but at the same time they've consistently finished top 5 in the West these past few seasons, and I think they can do it again. For my prediction, I do think they'll continue this streak of finishing top 5, and I think they'll finish the 5th seed once again. And they may even go a little higher, so I'll put their ceiling at the 4th seed, and this would be finishing behind the Lakers, Clippers, and then probably the Warriors or the Nuggets. And then for their floor, I don't really see them dropping down very far, if I'm honest, and probably only to the 6th seed. Because when I'm just looking at the standings, they're definitely one of the 6 best teams in the NBA, and I don't think any of those other teams will finish above them. So like a few of my other predictions, this is a very tight window from 4th to 6th seed, but I am quite confident about this. But now for the playoffs, they don't exactly have a history of having playoff success, because for the past 4 years at least, they haven't got out of the second round. But for this year, I do think they'll actually get out of the first round, but then probably lose in the second round. Anything past the second round though, I would say is a huge win for the Utah Jazz though, as the top of the Western Conference is really strong this year. But then for their floor, I wouldn't be incredibly shocked if they went out of the first round again like they've done these past 2 seasons. But yeah, they're definitely good enough to get out of the first round, so hopefully they will do that. So yeah, that's what I think about the Utah Jazz, but I'd really like to know what you think. Leave a comment down below giving your predictions for them and I'll make sure to get back to you. And then as always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you on my next video.